Advanced Speaking and Pronunciation. Video 3, Basic Sentence Stress. Part 1. Review. Word stress. In our previous video, we discussed that every word in English has at least one stressed syllable, which will sound louder, longer, and clearer than the other syllables in the word. Many of these words follow a particular pattern to determine where that stressed syllable will be, often depending on how many syllables the word has, which language the word comes from, and which suffix, if any, appears at the end of the word. In today's video, we will discuss sentence stress, including identifying which words in a sentence will receive emphasis and how sentences can be divided based on ideas of rhythm. Part 2. What are content words? Content words are those words we use in language that contain meaning by themselves. For example, nouns are considered to be content words because we can understand what they basically mean without any other context. Look at the following sentence. He is a student. In this sentence, the words he and student are nouns, though he is specifically considered a pronoun. Now, what would happen if we remove the other two words? He, student. It's not a complete sentence, but it still keeps its basic meaning. We can still get the general idea of the sentence without those two words. Therefore, these two words, especially student, are considered to be content words. Content words are generally words from the following parts of speech. Nouns, especially proper nouns, including names. Almost all verbs, except to be and affirmative helping verbs. Adjectives. Adverbs, including those that negate verbs, such as not with the words don't and can't, etc. Some prepositions, especially negative ones, such as without. And some connectors, but generally not the words and, but, or, so, or yet. Structure words. The other words in a sentence are referred to as structure words. While they are important to the overall structure of the sentence, they normally do not have any meaning by themselves. For example, the verb to be is very important to putting our sample sentence together, but the word is does not actually have any meaning by itself. It needs other words around it in order for it to make sense. Looking at our example again, this time let's remove the two content words. What do we have left? Is a. It's almost impossible to guess what the other words in the sentence are. They could be anything. Now, some examples of structure words are articles, such as an, and the. Most prepositions, especially short one-syllable, with such as words for, to, and, etc. Some connectors, especially and, but, or, so, yet. And most pronouns, too, especially object pronouns, such as him, her, or it. Content words and sentence stress. In a sentence, generally only the content words will be stressed. Therefore, these will be the words that will sound louder, longer, and clearer. When we stress these particular words, we do so on their stressed syllable, especially if the words have more than one syllable. Let's demonstrate with a few examples. Follow along and repeat. Now, to simplify things, we will underline the stressed syllable in the content words to indicate how sentence stress works. Listen and repeat. I am a student. Susan is from France. The sun is really hot today. Where are you going? Part 3. Rhythmic units. All of the examples we have seen so far have been fairly short in length. However, what happens when we have longer sentences? Because English is a rhythmic language, instead of just continuing with stressing the content words, English will also consider the general idea of meter as well. Meter involves the division of groups of words into a specific number of syllables and syllable stress. In poetry, we think of meter as the specific number of beats, both stressed and unstressed, in a verse or line of a poem. In music, we think of meter as the number of beats in a measure. Let's see 2 examples. For example, in poetry, in this poem, The Raven, by the famous American author Edgar Allan Poe, you will notice that there is a very specific structure to how this first part of the poem goes. Now, we will notice how lines 1 and 3 have the same total number of syllables, which in this case is 16. And they come in 8 pairs of syllables with the first syllable stressed. Now, this has a specific name called octameter, octa meaning 8. And these kinds of syllable pairs are called trochees. Many poems in English have very strict meter. Let's take a look at lines 1 and 3. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary. So again, 16 syllables divided into groups of 2. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping. So again, notice in most cases the first part of each group is stressed. So again, in poetry, oftentimes we pay very strict attention to which syllables are going to be stressed and unstressed. We also can recognize that poems have what we call rhyme schemes, where words sound very similar to each other, to help create a certain unity within the poem itself. Notice now how lines 2, 4, 5, and 6 all end with similar sounding words. All of the elements we've discussed here help contribute to the overall rhythm of the poem. Let's take a look now. Over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. So notice lore and door. 'Tis some visitor, I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. So again, in poetry, we pay very close attention to how the syllables, both stressed and unstressed, and even how words sound, in order to make the poem feel that it has a particular specific rhythm. Now let's think about meter in music. Here is a famous melody called Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Once again, notice that in music, they have these little indicators here to tell us where each measure or break is going to occur. So in music, the meter of a song or musical piece is indicated by what we call the time signature, which is noted in the first measure. Now, a measure is a unit of rhythm in music. The symbol that we see here that looks like the letter C indicates that there are 4 beats for every measure, with the quarter note counting for 1 beat. And then notice how the break between measures will give us a slight pause until the next measure. Let's take a look. So again, notice this indicates that there are 4 beats, and that this is a quarter note. So each one will count as 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Now this is called a half note. And in this case, a half note is worth 2 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. So even in music, we have a very strict idea of how many beats or stresses we will have in each measure or unit. Now typically the first note of each pair of notes will be the stress note, which we call the upbeat. This will match the syllable stress of the word itself. Listen and repeat as you hear these measures of the song. Now watch what we're going to do with the first line. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. So notice again the beat, da da, da da, da da, da da. So the first syllable is the stress syllable, and this is also where the beat of the music is going to occur. Da da, da da. Let's continue. How I wonder what you are. So again, in music, there is a very specific understanding of stress and how many beats we have as well. So notice, again, for those two words star and are, much like in poetry, these two rhyme, because this is a poem set to music, and that's because these words will count, as we said before, for 2 beats. And part of it is because in English we can stretch vowel sounds, and since both also rhyme, we can feel as if the rhythm of this song is very consistent. In both English poetry and song, the goal is often to try and imitate the natural speaking patterns we use in everyday language. However, in normal English sentences, we do not follow such strict measurements. Instead, we identify places in sentences, especially longer sentences, where we can take a very short break or pause in preparing for the next part of a sentence, much like we saw with the measure in music. For the purpose of this video, we will not use the word meter. We will call these breaks rhythmic units. Though there are no definitive measurements about how many beats, stressed syllables, a rhythmic unit has, we can follow these general rules to determine good places to pause. Right after an extended subject phrase, right after the object of the verb, if the sentence is compound, usually right at the connector, or even with punctuation such as a comma or semicolon. And again, these are not all of the examples, but these are the most popular ones. Let's look at some examples. First, let's look at the extended subject phrase. Now, once again, we will underline the stressed words of the sentence, and we will use this slash mark to represent where to take a short pause to prepare for the next rhythmic unit. Now, again, it will not feel like poetry necessarily or music, but I think you will get the same basic feeling when you go through these sentences. So listen and repeat. Workers at the factory get to leave early on Fridays. The computer in his office crashed yesterday afternoon. So you can notice how I take a very short break here in these two places after the subject phrase and before the next verb. Now let's demonstrate after the object of a verb. I fixed a tomato and lettuce sandwich for my friend. We didn't have time to go to the store. Watch where we pause at a connector. She's not at all tired, but it's still early. I don't have time off, so I can't come over. Part 4, Review. In today's video, we learned about how to stress words in a sentence. Sentence stress involves identifying which are content words, or words that have meaning by themselves, and which are structure words, which are words that help provide structure to a sentence but do not have meaning by themselves. In English, we generally stress content words. These are the words that will sound longer, louder, and clearer in comparison with the other structure words in the sentence. In sentences that are longer, we generally divide the sentence up into shorter rhythmic units. Much like with poetry and music, these units provide an opportunity to take a quick break or pause to prepare for the next rhythmic unit. There is no strict measurement of how many syllables, both stressed and unstressed, make up one rhythmic unit, but there are some general rules where we typically tend to divide a sentence. In our next video, we will expand on the idea of sentence stress and connect it back to the idea of prosody, a concept we began discussing in video 1. We will also begin exploring the idea of intonation, another prosodic feature, which will further expand our understanding of the musical quality of the English language. Once again, I would like to remind you that we have several educational websites to help with your speaking and pronunciation and your vocabulary development. All of these can be found at our main page of kentoneasl.org/class-websites. Also, we've been using dictionary.com as one of our resources, but there are several online dictionaries that are also quite good. We'll see you next time for video 4, Intonation.